Monday Live. My guest today, well, you guys can see who the guest is that we have here today on Hope for Our Times. This is great. So John Holler's going to be on in just a second, but let you know this, Alex Newman is going to be live with me tomorrow from the New American. So we have a couple of terrific days right in a row. And so let's welcome John. John, great to have you on with me.
Good to be here, Tom.
This is cool. This is cool. I think there they go. Now we're both together. Hey, so this is really good. There's, as you say in the text messages, there's nothing to talk about. So I titled today, Batten Down the Hatches, because I'm looking at everything and knowing you were going to be on today. And then you started sending me all these things this morning. I'm thinking Batten Down the Hatches was the right title for today because, baby, things are rocking and rolling, and it's just nonstop.
It is a time of acceleration and convergence that we both talk about all the time. It's an amazing thing to watch, and it's sort of like every now and then when I'm preparing a weekly thing or a midweek thing, and I think, well, I'm not sure I have enough to talk about. And my wife always laughs at me and says, yeah, right, you don't have enough to talk about. But sometimes I wonder, and then I get up there and all of a sudden I've been talking for an hour and a half and I think, I better cut this off because I'm going to wear out my welcome. And so I think you're going to Israel in a couple of days. So as I said to you before we started, I'm pretty sure we'll be done by then.
Yeah.
You should make your flight.
I should make my flight. I don't know. We're flying out of Los Angeles. That's a little shaky in and of itself. So
that's torture.
It is torture. The drive from here to Los Angeles is the worst. Well, it's fine for the first hour. The rest of it's not.
Somebody flew me out there to do something once, and I thought, well, I could save them money, but I usually go to Ontario, so I said I'll go to LAX because it was hundreds of dollars cheaper. And it took me longer to get from my walk off the airplane to my rental car leaving the airport than it did to fly from Dallas to Los Angeles.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, you go from Ontario to Dallas or Palm Springs to Dallas is great. If you ever, next time you come out this way, flying to Palm Springs, it's no traffic, great restaurants. You've been there.
My stepfather-in-law lives about 5 minutes from the Ontario airport, so we know that one pretty well. So
yeah, any way to avoid Los Angeles. That's my.
And we know where all the in and outs are between the airport and home. So
all right, hey, so there's so much to talk about. In all seriousness, everyone, this is what we got to risk. We don't want to risk this today. This is the problem. Is coming across like a couple of conspiracy nuts that went out on a fringe, because there's just some things today that you look at that we want to present things accurately. You go back to the Saudi agreement. I think what was it from 1987? Let me pull it up here.
You're talking about the London Agreement?
The London Agreement, 1987. So involved in this, okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong. King Hussein from Jordan, right? Shimon Peres.
He was the foreign minister of Israel in 1987.
Yep. Okay, then you have, the Zayed al-Rifai, is that correct? Jordanian. Yossi Beilin from Israeli Foreign Affairs. And then, of course, a few others, including the now King, what's his name?
Charles.
King Charles. I think King George. Wait, that's not.
At the time, the Prince of Wales.
Prince of Wales.
He wanted to help push peace in the Middle East.
Okay.
And so he put together this thing called the London Agreement. He brought in Shimon Peres. The Israeli prime minister at the time would not come in because he wasn't sure it would be politically expedient for him to do so. They reached an agreement, but Peres took it back, and it was sort of thrown away by the Yitzhak Shamir, the Israeli prime minister at the time. But the agreement, Tom, is very interesting. It was a thing called the Jordanian option. And the reason I bring that up is it's resurfaced here recently. Now, listen, when you talk about these things and you talk about covenants and Antichrist and all these things, there's a lot of different opinions. As you know, you go to a conference and you'll have conflicting views of where the Antichrist comes from and that type of thing. So I'm just presenting this. I don't have a conclusion. I haven't written a book. And I find that, when you bring up a possibility, that the biggest pushback you get are from the people who've written a book that has a contrary view. So I'm open to all these views in the way that it works out. So I just want to understand that. But a few months ago, I noticed an article in the Wall Street Journal of all places. It was in Saturday, and on Saturday in section C, they have a big article about some geopolitical topic. It might be Janet Yellen one week, but this one was Jordan's role in peace in the Middle East. And so I started looking into it. That was in June. And then a month later, in July, an article appeared in Al Arabiya by a Saudi who was a close associate of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, who just recently, by the way, was named by his father as the prime minister of Saudi Arabia as well, which is kind of an unusual move. And we know that King Salman's in his 80s, so he's not going to last that long. But the article, and it was in Al Arabiya, and then there's a guy named David Singer who's picked up on it in Times of Israel and some of the Israeli publications, and he's a big proponent of it. And really what it is now, it's a proposal for a peace plan called the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine. And it's essentially a reworking of the Jordanian option. And the Jordanian option that King Charles put forth in 1987 had first been proposed back in the 60s and around 1970, and it was kind of rejected. And then it resurfaced under King Charles. And now it seems Mohammed bin Salman has approved it coming back. And essentially what it would be a true two-state solution. In 1920, there was a conference in San Remo, Italy. Mm-hmm. And at that conference, they decided on a Jewish state for the Jews and a state for the Palestinians. That was the two-state solution. And it was Transjordan, east of the Jordan River, would be the Palestinian Arab state. West of the Jordan would be the Jewish state. That was a two-state solution. So when you hear all these morons in our government and stuff talking about a two-state solution, they're not talking about a two-state solution. They're talking about a three-state or four-state solution. Because it's Jordan, it's Palestine, it's Gaza, and Israel. So
yeah.
So their nomenclature is completely off.
Yeah. So for clarification for everybody watching, what you're saying at San Remo is basically if you were to take the borders of Israel right now, and assuming they include Gaza, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, that was correct. San Remo. Everything east of that was Jordan, Transjordan.
It was called the Kingdom, Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan.
So that was the two-state solution. So what they're really saying now is they're cutting up more of Israel is what they really want to do, which has happened since, the Balfour Declaration, the British Mandate. You start looking at all of it, and Israel has just consistently been shrunk. Even with San Remo, they still had the two-state solution, but it isn't what they're talking about today.
No, and there was a French lawyer who wrote extensively on this. I can never remember his name, but the thing that happened, the San Remo conference in 1922, that partition plan was approved by the League of Nations. So on an international law basis, the only thing that's ever been agreed to by the international community and never really overturned was this division of the land between Transjordan, east of the Jordan River, and Israel, west of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean back in 1922. So the UN came in and they kind of affirmed it and everything, and then everything started to change. Of course, Israel declared its independence in 1948. There was immediately a war, and then things got divided and that type of thing. But you're going to Israel, and by the way, so in 1987, when they did this London Agreement, brought about by meeting by Prince Charles, then the Prince of Wales, now King Charles III, when Israel didn't approve it, King Hussein, he just kind of like, okay, forget it. We have no interest in anything west of the Jordan River in is this term of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. We just don't want anything to do with it. But now it seems to be having a revival under some proposals coming from the Saudis. So I don't know if this is the way that it's going to work out. I know that this is something that King Charles likes, and maybe this will come back now. And, of course, he's heavily involved with the World Economic Forum. And there's a book that's been out there for 20 years. And I'm not saying I'm adopting this view, but I'm saying it's one of the views of the potential Antichrist that I think should be considered. And again, people that have another view or like another view, everybody will say that we're idiots, conspiracy theorists, and that type of thing. But it was a book by a guy named Tim Cohen, I think his name was.
Yeah, that's it.
Is called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, and he goes into the British heraldry and the British royal line, and finds that they even claim descent from the Hashemite line, which is the same line that we get King Abdullah from Jordan from today. It's interesting, but when you go to Israel in a couple of days, if you're ever driving up Highway 60, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, out of Jerusalem, like up towards Ramallah, towards Shiloh, up the Patriarch's Highway going north into Samaria, you'll pass a hill, and on top of this hill, it's about the highest point of land around Jerusalem. It's called Gibeah, and on top of this hill is a unfinished building. And it's very interesting because this is how the Muslims think. And I was fascinated by this because when we were there with Joel Kramer, every day we went up to Samaria, we drove by this, and he told me about it. That is where King Hussein, the father of the current king of Jordan, was building his palace that he was going to live in. And it's symbolic. It's never been finished. So when he abandoned the London Agreement and said, we have no more interest in the West Bank, all the construction on that palace stopped, and you see the steel superstructure there today. But that palace is built at Gibeah. And what's Gibeah? Gibeah was the capital of the tribe of Benjamin. That is where Saul was from. So understand the symbolic nature. This is what Muslims do, is they build on your place as a statement. So the statement is, yeah, Israel, this may be where your first king came from, but this is where I'm building my palace.
This is
very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think that just reminds me of Daniel chapter. It is Daniel chapter 11. When at the end of Daniel chapter 11, when you have what appears to be Antichrist, he moves his palace into he
plants his tent in the beautiful land.
In the beautiful land. I mean, as you're saying this, and listen, everybody, we're not saying this person's Antichrist. We're not naming Antichrist, but you got to admit, everybody, there are very fascinating things that are happening right now. And John, you told me that story off camera one time before, and it's stuck in my head. And
you're going to stop by and see it when you're there.
Well, yeah. So next 2 weeks, I'll be in that area. So listen, this is what I've been asked if I could do: interview this guy who claims to be the Messiah. You've been seeing that, right? If not, I'll find some of the rabbis that want to talk about him. But this, I mean, you look at this and go, and this palace in Gibeah, not only that was connected with this agreement, with these people involved with the Hashemite kingdom, which is now having a resurgence. I mean, I don't know if I should laugh about this or be amazed. I mean, it's just so, it's like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is really weird stuff.
Yeah, and you sort of layer it into with King Abdullah, who was sort of went to the UN and was sort of spouting blood libels against the Jewish people about the Temple Mount, and you see these Muslim publications, and it's Arab news. It's all the Muslim publications. I read Al Akbar every day, which is the Hezbollah-supported newspaper in Lebanon. It's a kind of a pain to go through and translate it. There's also Hezbollah supported media that I look at every day. And but understand that, you know, King Abdullah, when he talks about I'm the keeper of the holy places, you know, which is Jerusalem, the city, and he always says this in his speeches. I've seen him say it in Russia. I've seen him say it at the UN. I protect the holy sites of the Christians and Muslims in Jerusalem. But he never mentions the Jews, never mentions them. And so when you go today to the Temple Mount, and this is always a controversial thing, I believe the Temple Mount is the area where the first and second temple stood, Solomon's, and then the second temple built and then remodeled by Herod. And I think this is the place. But you go to the place where the Orthodox Jews believe this is the site of Solomon's temple. And I don't know if you've ever been in it, but we were there back in 1995, and you could still go inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and you could go inside the Dome of the Rock. And inside the Dome of the Rock, there are panels that have sections of the Quran on them, and they're probably the oldest existing quotations of the Quran on the planet that are on that place. And there it says, God has no son, is one of the panels says.
That's on the inside.
So, very symbolic.
Correct.
Yeah, that's inside the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah, I was watching, actually, it's not a coincidence, but I was watching Joel Kramer last night.
Okay.
And he was,
friend.
I can't wait to meet him. And he was talking about the inside of the dome. You know, now you can only see videos that have been taken by someone else there or something like that. Can't get it now. But so many fascinating things. And I want to come back to some of these because we need to. Here's this
Can I just
story.
say one thing, by the way?
Please.
If you want a book that I think is one of the best books on archaeology that sort of brings it down to the layman level, Joel has a new book out. I think it's part one of a series that he's going to do eventually. It's called Where God Came Down. I would highly recommend that you go and purchase that book. I don't recommend a lot of books, but that one I think will change your life.
I would say Joel Kramer, watching his videos on YouTube is you're going to be blessed by watching
The
it.
channel is Expedition Bible.
Yeah, he has that one. He also has the ones that Eric Johnson has been posting for a long time.
Right.
It's good stuff. You're going to be blessed. Okay. This is out of World Israel News, and we're not going to stop here because I got to ask you about the FII and the Saudis and Davos World Economic Forum. But this ties into what you're saying with what we're talking about with everything else. World Israel News, Judea and Samaria won't be part of Israel, not worth investing in, says the labor leader. That, just real quick comment on that. Then we got to look at the Saudi stuff because this is...
Okay, so I don't remember her name, but she's part of the Meretz party, head of the Meretz party. And then there's elections, I think, next week, a week from tomorrow in Jerusalem, November 1st. So that'll be kind of an interesting time to be in Israel. And so she's a crazy lunatic leftist, okay? But it's kind of interesting because here she is coming out and she's saying, forget Jews living in Judea and Samaria. Now, I have friends that live in Judea and Samaria. I mean, they're part of the settler movement. They're conservatives. They're Orthodox Jewish believer. They follow Orthodox Judaism. And they believe that this thing tied with the land, particularly the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. That's why it's so frustrating when you go over there. Like when we went with Joel, and we went to Shechem, we went to Ai, we went to Bethel, we went to Samaria, we went to Shiloh. And we went to these sites. We were there in May. That's a heavy tourist month. This was one of the heaviest tourist times. 2017 was the 50th anniversary of the 6-day war when we were there. There was nobody at these sites, Tom. We went to Hebron. We went to Mamre. We went to the Tomb of the Patriarchs. We went to Tel Rumedia. We went to the Herodian. And it was just Pam and Joel and I. We were the only people there, except for a couple from the Netherlands we ran into at Shiloh. But this is the biblical heartland. And so here's one of the leaders, and she's in this last government. I think she was the energy minister, by the way, who said, by the way, guess what? Last December, she issued a statement. We're not giving any more leases for the exploration of gas in the Mediterranean
For Israel.
because there's enough energy.
So
And then Ukraine war happened, and what happened?
yeah.
And now we have an energy crisis all over the world. So, but it's interesting what she said, and a friend of mine brought this up, and I thought it was a good point. And he said, here she is essentially telling Jews to get out of Judea and Samaria. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, that's practice. Because maybe you will now remember the words of Jesus, who said in Matthew chapter 24, when you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel the prophet, get out of town and flee, and flee to the wilderness. And so it's sort of like she's now telling them in advance, you better get out of here.
Yeah, and we're going to make sure you leave. Yeah, right. We're going to make sure you leave. So very, very interesting that also the words of Jesus also give us evidence. No, the Jews will be in the area of Judea when this all does go down. But the fact that she said it shows the sentiment that is out there by all those who are anti-Israel. Obviously, she's an Israeli. Her name is Merev Makeli. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Makeli?
That sounds.
But there are these Jews who are not pro-Jew and not pro-Israel.
No. It's interesting, too, if you look at the prophecy of Matthew chapter 24, this is sort of, I was thinking about it one day, and I'm sort of like, well, you know what? This is a prophecy where Jesus, we know, so for thousands of years, for almost 2,000 years, there wasn't a real Jewish presence that was controlling Jerusalem. But now there is. And so now maybe you can understand Jesus says, no, pray when this happens that it's not on the Shabbat. Yeah. Because if you're in Jerusalem on Shabbat, there's no bus service. You know what I mean? So it sort of implies that there's going to be Jewish control of that area at some point in the distant future when this event happens, if you really unpack what Jesus said.
Yeah. I find all of this just so fascinating. The conversations that are out there, things like this are happening. Okay, then we take the Saudis and we have the FII and we have all these green plans.
Right.
That the World Economic Forum, but let's talk a little bit about this. So you have not just World Economic Forum at Davos, the Saudis have their own version along with some others.
Yeah, the Saudis have a thing, and I did an update back in June about this, and I talked about a thing called the Saudis and ESG and the Abraham Accords. And so as I was researching ESG, because this seems to be what drives a lot of this insane thing about green energy and carbon credits and that type of thing, it's been adopted by some of the big financial investment houses like BlackRock and others. And it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And essentially it means, clean energy, and we're going to control everything. I just mentioned to you before we started talking that for all the work that the leftists in California have done to reduce carbon emissions, and you know this because of the fire almost affected your home here a couple months ago, or whenever that was. Yeah. Those fires, the wildfires in California this year had more carbon emissions than California was able to reduce in the last 20 years, the fires this year alone. So the whole thing about this green agenda is not about, we're not going to reduce carbon emissions. China just came out and said, we're going to do a lot of coal-fired power plants because we need the power. And it's going to be many, many times more than the California fires this year that they're going to emit carbon. It's about control. They want to control you. So the Saudis have figured out, I think, and the Russians have figured out that if we push this ESG on those stupid people in the West, they'll buy into it under the sort of the Marxist control agenda. And so the Russians have funded left-wing groups on energy, and then the Saudis have this thing called FII Institute, Financial Investment Initiative Institute, and they actually have a conference starting tomorrow in Riyadh. that's going to be talking about the same things that they talk about at Davos, about the same things that the United Arab Emirates that they talk about at the World Government Summit, and that they talk about the fourth big conference that's held. And I kind of got this from looking at what one of the Saudi guys said about FII. He said, this is one of the four great world conference of the elites where we're going to determine things. And the other one, it's St. Petersburg Economic, SPEITH. I can't remember what the last three letters stand for. That's run by Vladimir Putin. And these are the four biggest elite attended conferences of the elites in the world. And they're all sort of pushing the same thing. They're all pulling in the same direction. So if you go to FII-institute.org, you can dig into what they say about ESG. And so when they put out a thing and they talk about ESG, for example, there's a Future Focus 2025 publication of the World Economic Forum that came out in July or August. And I did a word search on there. It's they all put out these great PDF documents, make great graphics for presentations. But they used ESG like 68 times in that document that the World Economic Forum put out. But the FII Institute has been a big pusher of ESG. Now, why would the Saudis and Russians do that? Why do they want people to not develop gas and oil and stuff? Because they have gas and oil and they want to up the price. And so it was at the 2017 FII conference. So this is the sixth one. So that would have been, I think, the first one in 2017. That's when Mohammed bin Salman, then the newly anointed crown prince of Saudi Arabia. When Trump went to Saudi Arabia in May of 2017, Mohammed bin Salman was the deputy crown prince. After that meeting, a few months later, he became the crown prince. And lo and behold, they're now pushing all of these agenda. And he went there at the 2017 meeting and he said, hey, let's have we have this new city we're building called Neom, the line. And you got to look into that. That's just unbelievable.
We pulled up those last time, I think it was the time before you were on here. I pulled up some of those drawings that you had, talked about ancient Babylon and the area covered in Neom. Yeah. It was really fascinating. You mentioned gas, and you mentioned why would the Saudis and Russians do this? They have gas. So I read the other day that the U.S. is charging Europe for gas 4 times the amount that Europe should pay or was paying. So
yeah, we're sending liquefied natural gas over there. There's a shortage of liquefied natural gas containers, but it just so happens that the guy who negotiated the maritime border deal between Lebanon and Israel, a guy named Amos Hochstein. This is the guy who in December announced the United States is not going to support the East Med pipeline. That leaves Israel one option, liquefied natural gas. But guess what? The United States we had a liquefied natural gas facility near Houston that had a fire, but it's coming back online, and there are 2 new ones opening. And it just so happens that one of these LNG facilities is being done by a company called Tellurian. Go look through the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. There are these first full-page articles about this great company called Tellurian. Well, what did Amos Hochstein do? He worked for the Obama administration, but during Trump, he was the executive vice president of marketing for a company called Tellurian that's pushing the liquefied natural gas. So remember when we talked, I was a little bit skeptical, like, why would we do this Nord Stream pipeline? Why would we have damaged that? Why would we have attacked that? But then you start looking like, here's the Amos Hochstein, the guy who's working for a liquefied natural gas company who's negotiating all the gas deals in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Follow the money trail.
And he worked for one of the biggest liquefied natural gas suppliers in the world. And look at how amazing the United States could just step in and supply the gas that they're short on.
What a quinky dink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a problem because there aren't sufficient facilities there in Europe. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street or Financial Times or someplace talking about the LNG ships are stacking up at LNG facilities in Europe because they can't offload them fast enough, which means that I don't understand this. Europe has big trouble this year on energy. People are going to die. In my mind, I have trouble understanding why they want to do that. I do know why they want to do that, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So you have that Europe. It's looking very bad for Europe in the coming winter, and then there's this coming out of Germany with hospital closures. So they're projecting hospital closures due to healthcare shortfall. Many hospitals in Germany may be forced into bankruptcy. But it's this was due to soaring energy prices and inflation. So, you're looking at it's a whole house of cards.
Everything is collapsing.
Everything is collapsing, and Europe it's looking really bad in Europe. I know people from Europe watched this program. I'm looking going, man, I have a lot of people that comment from the Netherlands on here. Yeah,
well,
that does look good.
Look, Poland and Netherlands are big agricultural producing areas in Europe. And the Financial Times, I was talking to an attorney the other day. I didn't know if she was a believer. Turned out I said this, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to talk to another believer." Because I said I was reading the Financial Times the other day, and it was like reading through the first, chapters of Revelation. And she said, "Are you a believer?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, nobody talks about this. No church talks about this stuff." And I said, "Well, I do."
Yeah.
So natural gas is a very one of the most important components in the manufacture of fertilizer. And the way the seeds are manufactured or brought to market now, GMO seeds, they need fertilizer to unlock their production. So fertilizer is incredibly important to the food chain. So in Poland, they have 6 or 9 fertilizer producing facilities. Every one of them is now shut down because they don't think they're going to have enough natural gas. Wow. All the smelters, all the aluminum, all the iron. In the Financial Times the other day, it said Europe stands on the risk. Goldman Sachs report, Europe is being deindustrialized and it may never recover.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
How fast did that happen, Tom?
Yeah. Really, when you just go back to the beginning of COVID and you watch what's happened since then and all these rules and regulations from mandates to the way we got to change the economy, which, I really wanted to ask you your thoughts on the Mississippi River drying up. But I want to ask you this first, at the sake of hopefully we won't run out of time, but Time Magazine had an article, you sent it to me, from back in October of 2020. So just before the election, right? And It projected what's everything going to look like come 2023. Mainly what's America going to look like come 2023.
Well, it had one of those interesting pictures. Those pictures where they have a satellite picture of before and after, and you kind of slide it over. So they kind of stopped it right in the middle. It's
hard to see what it is, but
I'll try to do a midweek update this week and include it. But it was October or November of 2020. It was the international version. It said The Great Reset. That was the title. It was the title that Time Magazine came out. They put Great Reset on the cover, and then everybody said, "Oh, you mean that conspiracy theory that's never going to happen?" Well, what's Time Magazine talking about? There you go. And so you see it takes it from sort of the industrialized to the AI age in 2023. Now, how do they get from 2020 to 2023 with that much change that quickly? Unless there are a lot of people that have been working on the agenda. And so back to where we started this, one of the biggest green pushers of the green energy thing has been the now former Prince of Wales, King Charles, now King Charles III. And you can go to the World Economic Forum website and you can see when they announced the Great Reset thing back in 2020, in the midst of all of this, they have a whole page dedicated to King Charles because he did the keynote speech when that thing opened. So listen, I'm not saying that he is, okay? I'm just saying it's something that needs to be considered in all of this because of his involvement behind the scenes in this.
Yes, I think he knocked off his former wife.
I'll plead the fifth on that. On the event that he might hire me to represent him in that case.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's just,
I don't want to create a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, just so many fascinating things that are taking place. So your thoughts, COP26 meeting, King George, then Prince Charles.
Of Wales.
He gets up and he says, with trillions at his disposal, we all saw the video, and he went on to talk about more at his disposal than all of the GDP of the world combined.
And he was talking about a military-style campaign.
Military-style campaign to bring about the changes that are necessary.
Look, there's a lot of thought that Charles converted to Islam. He has been recognized by Al-Azhar University, the leading Shia or Sunni Islamic institution in the world, where, by the way, a former president of two administrations and now sort of the shadow president, I think, of the third administration, Barack Obama, went on June 4th, 2009, and gave his famous speech talking about Islam and Christianity. And I think that was the trigger for the Arab Spring that started in late 2010. It's a very important speech. Everybody should go and listen to it. As painful as it is, you can still find it online. June 4th, 2009. And so that's the institution that sort of recognized King Charles III, who has indicated that he did not want to become he's not going to change the oath that he takes when he's coronated king next spring, but he is going to say he wants to be the defender of faith. He would rather say he's the defender of faith or faiths rather than defender of the faith. And that's a significant change.
Yeah, that is a significant change. Do you want to answer some other questions?
So all this stuff, but all this stuff came so quickly. So here's Queen Elizabeth. I mean, I was born in 1954. She was queen. And she's just a year younger than my mother. And so for all 68 years I've been alive, there's been one queen, and now it's changed. And everything kind of flows along with it. And who do they come up with is this guy who's pushing this green agenda everywhere and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's very interesting.
And he's involved with this document that we talked about in the beginning of the program for...
the London Agreement back in 1987. And then that seems to have resurfaced here recently under a Saudi proposal for the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine. Now, I think King Abdullah, if you ask him, he would say, I don't want to rule those people. I mean, look at what's going on there now. I mean, be careful when you're over there because there's a lot of operations. General Avivi talked about this in Nablus, and the clans are fighting among the Palestinians, and it's a very dicey situation there, and right at the time of these elections.
Well, I won't take any of the tour group into those areas. The tour group will all be going to the safe areas, but I would certainly go with John Haller to those areas. Hey,
well, I'm a big old, there's not an upside to messing with an American. So let them know you're an American.
It's not a problem. You know what, everybody? It's really not a problem over there. You're surprised.
It's not that bad.
How much safer it is. It's way safer over there than it is going to a Walmart here in the States. I'll say that much right now.
I will tell you, the last time we were there, they always tell you if you don't want to buy something, particularly in the Arab quarter of the old city, don't make eye contact with the merchants. And so I'm walking through the old, and I'm a pretty big guy in Israel. I look like a Nephilim, okay? And I make eye contact with this guy, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, hello there, big man." You must be very wealthy. Come, let me sell you many things.
That's so it, isn't it?
Yep, it is. I mean, it's just the way it is.
It is exciting, though. It is really exciting, and you feel. I mean, you feel really safe in the Arab section too.
Yeah,
it is really amazing. Okay, this question comes from the app from Ann Barbosa. What are your thoughts about Saudi Arabia wanting to join BRICS?
I think that there's a desire on a lot of countries to get rid of the petrodollar, and the dollar is the central reserve currency of the world. Except right now, the dollar is incredibly strong, and this is the British pound used to be the world reserve currency, and it was a several-year transition. So I don't know that it's going to happen overnight. But all I can say is this: I mean, look at what happened in the UK. They put Liz Truss in, and she wanted to make some changes to help financially. And the British pound almost collapsed. I mean, it literally it almost collapsed in one day. And now Liz Truss gets blamed for everything. Now, I personally think that she was not, I mean, she's a World Economic Forum type, but I don't think she was completely on board. And they had to get rid of her. And so they blamed everything on her, even though she'd only been in office a short time. So now they've got this 42-year-old ethnic Indian guy, Sunak, who's going to be running it. It'll be interesting to see. So I don't know if the Saudis, the BRICS thing is going to move forward. China has tremendous trouble right now. Although I was reading that Russia, China, all these countries, India, they're all buying gold like crazy, and we sold them the most of it. The United States. So I don't understand what's going on. I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre. I can't even begin to unpack it sometimes. But I don't know. I don't know that the central reserve currency is going to change. Although there are some guys saying that they want to do it in December, and then I'm also reading that they want to do it next spring, to move everything to a central bank digital currency around the world, to implement those, which will be a big problem. And if you don't think it's a big problem, go look at the video of what happened at the Chinese Communist Party meeting over the weekend in Beijing. Yesterday, they made Xi essentially the new emperor for life of China. He's the most ruthless guy in the world scene to run a country since Mao. And remember, about 100 million Chinese died under Mao. And so here is did you see this video, Tom? Xi's predecessor is sitting in the Great Hall of the People right next to him. And he's about ready to get up and talk. And the word is he was going to say something negative about Xi. And before he talks, 3 men will walk up to him, tap him on the shoulder and say, whatever his name is, you need to come with us.
Really?
Not a person, hundreds of the Chinese ruling elite were there. Nobody looked at him. He reached out, grabbed Xi on the way out, sort of an appeal, and Xi just kind of looked at him and nodded, and they took him away.
Wow.
He may never be seen again. So you need to understand, though, that that's the mentality of this Chinese credit system that's permeated the big tech companies and central bank digital currencies. And now they want to roll this out next spring. Interesting enough, right around the time that guy is going to be coronated as king of the British Empire.
This is fascinating. This person asked, this would be one for you, because you could pull this off. This comes from Ross Anderson. This is great information. Is there an effort to send this over to Glenn Beck or Joe Rogan or one of those guys? That would be you who could do that. You've got connections.
Yeah, I don't know. I would pray that Glenn gets saved, and Joe as well. They do have huge audiences, though. But and I'm not saying I've reached a conclusion on this, because the other interesting guy is this Erdogan keeps surfacing everywhere.
Oh, he surfaced.
Now he's going to be the gas supplier of Europe.
Yeah, so he just surfaced. Yeah, today. Yeah. Today he did. I think with Putin, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah, he was.
I mean, Putin's going to have his hands in everything. So I want to ask you this: the guy who began the company over in China, he since has disappeared because he said some things against Xi. It was the equivalent of Amazon. Do you remember the name of that company?
Alibaba.
Alibaba. Do you know what happened to him?
Jack
Jack
what's his
Ma.
name? Jack Ma.
Jack Ma, that's it.
I think he's kind of surfaced, but this is
resurfaced?
what Xi does, because Xi thought that these companies were getting too big, that he couldn't control them, and so a lot of these people have just been disappeared and had their fortunes wiped out or significantly reduced.
Yeah.
And he is in charge. He is the most isolated, ruthless leader on the planet right now. And China's in big economic trouble. They have a demographic problem that is of their own making. They are never recovering from this. Okay. The projections are by 2050, let's say the Lord tarries. And whenever I talk about it, everybody says, oh, so you don't think the Lord's not coming very soon?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm just saying these are what the projections are on population mass. China is dying off. They're redoing their census. They overstated. Oh, we think we made a mistake of 100 million people, mostly female. They did 500 million forced abortions. That's not just one generation, my friends, that they killed. That is every generation that those children would have had.
500
China
million.
will not recover. Yeah. When people get to these demographic problems, the biggest demographic problems in the world, China, Russia, Iran, they're declining. And people who have a sense of they want to be history, they have a sense of their empire, like Putin, like Khomeini, like Xi, that's when they're most dangerous, when they think they're going to have to protect their legacy forever.
Yeah.
And that's how China views things. So I'm just saying that, what did we do? 75 million abortions in the United States voluntarily. They did 400 or 500 million forced abortions. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you think, how long will God let that kind of stuff go on?
I don't think much longer. And, it's an interesting dynamic, or as you point to, the reality of it is they won't recover. So when you think about it like this, here's what we're watching in America is, so the Hispanic community in America is completely flipping to the right. And primarily it's because of family. You have a dad, you have a mom. There's a hierarchy in the Mexican world that's very biblical. Whether people accept it or not, that's their problem. But they have children, they take care of their kids, they take care of grandma and grandpa, they take care of each other, and you have a mom and dad. That's how that's their thought process. They're flipping. As we project, if we're here for another 20 years, this is my prediction, because the entire left doesn't want to have children. They promote abortion. They don't even believe in marriage anymore. They don't believe in family. You project this out far enough, the only people having babies are people on the right. Guess
That's
what?
right.
Everything will flip another 20 years if it keeps on going this way in this country.
One would think that that's true. By the way, do you think things are going real well in the United States right now with inflation, social unrest?
Absolutely
everything?
awful.
Right. So in the midst of that, so who did Biden do an interview with last night for an hour? You can find it online. You need to look at this thing.
Who was it?
It was done by a guy who is documenting his transition from male to female. Trans guy. Did an hour interview in the East Room of the White House with Joe Biden talking about this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And Biden says, I think your transition is great. They don't want people to have babies. I'm telling you, they're sterilizing them. It's maddening. Now I don't think that, there's some people on the right. I don't know that they're going to build this great kingdom of God on earth too. I'm concerned about people who have that kind of orientation as well. But I was talking to somebody at church yesterday. I don't think Lot had to put up with this stuff in Sodom.
You know what you think? Lot was vexed. Now, you know, it's starting to make a lot more sense now in this nation what that meant. He lived there. You know, John, you know me, I live in California. There are some conservative pockets in California where I live,
Sure.
for example. I mean, you know that. But within it, we're still in this mad state that's run by Hollywood and Sacramento. And you got Pelosi, Newsom. We got all these Maxine Waters. We got them all. They all come from this place. And we understand in America, I think, a lot more what Lot was dealing with when the Bible said he was.
Yeah.
He was.
Well, that's
vexed.
a good litmus test. If you're vexed by what you see going on, that's a good check on where your relationship with the Lord.
And if you're not,
you need to get right with the Lord.
Yeah, that's a good check. Hey, I want to say hi to Dale Quimby. Dale, thanks for joining in. So Dale is moderator on James Cadiz program. Apparently he popped in here. Lisa D is our moderator here, along with adding a couple more.
Oh, now I'm in trouble.
My crew. Oh, no, it won't have anything to do with you. So, you know, one person on here was letting everybody know, listen, you need to repent and receive the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is the reality of it. You know, you got all these things going on. We didn't even talk about the Mississippi River, which I am kind of interested in your thoughts on it as we see things drying up. But if we had enough time, we'll go there. But Tammy G asked, what do you know about the USA having troops in Poland on the border of Ukraine?
The reports, I don't know if they're on the border of Ukraine, but there were reports I read today that the 101st Airborne has shipped out troops to Europe for the first time since World War II.
So
it looks pretty significant.
This is significant, and Zelensky, from what I understand, also he's asking for some kind of nuclear weapons to use. Is that correct? Have you heard that?
You know, it's so hard to figure out what the truth is over there because, you know, there's this dam on the Dnipro River and the Ukrainians come out and say, oh, Russia's going to blow that up and flood everything. And then the Russians go, see, they're going to look at the Ukrainians, they're planting a false flag and they're going to blame us. And then there was the same thing about it. The Russians came out and said that the Ukrainians were going to do a dirty bomb. And the Ukrainians come out and say, see, the Russians are going to do a false flag with a dirty bomb and blame us. So, you know, it's a state of war. It's the fog of war. I don't think things are going well for Russia. That they would go to Iran to get these drones to use. Now, the drones can be effective, but they're not super high tech. You know, it's sort of like a moped versus a Harley. You know, the Iranian drones, they can terrorize things, but they're effective, but they're not super high tech.
Yeah.
And if Russia used to be the greatest arms manufacturer in the world, and the fact that they are needing to go to Iran now to get these, and Iran's even outsourcing them to Tajikistan to produce, which, by the way, makes it difficult for Israel to do an operation because it's 1,000 miles to Tehran, but it's another 1,000 miles to Tajikistan to take these things out. So there's a logistics problem with Israel attacking those. So it's difficult. I just think things are not going well for Russia, but I am very, very concerned about the rhetoric and everything that's going on. And the people in charge of our government, I think have lost their minds, or they have an agenda.
Or both.
Look, I said this is what I said many times when Obama was in office, in real office, not just in the shadow office. What did he ever do on a foreign policy basis that did not ultimately benefit Russia? Think about it. Remember that conversation he had with Medvedev that was caught on the hot mic that, hey, let me get reelected and then I'll have more flexibility. So I'm very, very concerned. I mean, I grew up, I was 8 years old when the Cuban Missile Crisis hit. And I remember that. I can remember watching the black and white TV in our living room and asking my mother, is there going to be a nuclear war? I have a specific recollection of that. And the answer then was, I don't know. I sure don't hope so. And I would say the same thing my mother said. I don't know, but I sure hope it isn't. going to go that way.
Yeah. Well, you look at it. You mentioned it appears to you that Russia's they're not winning. What I see is the United States is pouring everything they can into this. But yet, when I read my Bible, this conversation I had with somebody the other day doesn't believe in Bible prophecy, but it's an interesting conversation. They understand world politics and international conflict. And he said, Russia is going to be eliminated. And I said, well, I don't believe Russia is going to be eliminated because of what the Bible teaches. Of course, he just kind of blew me off as being a nut. But, I mean, as you look at things developing, something's got to give here, because I do believe Russia's going to be here up to the Ezekiel 38 battle.
So we always talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39, right? But what if there's a war before that? And what changes will that make in the way we sort of look at Bible prophecy?
Okay.
Because I could see a war with Iran coming.
Can you hold on one second? I want to ask you about that. But I know I can already tell we're going to go over, so I got to come back to that. Somebody else is asking something about Queen Elizabeth to you. And so we got a bunch of different questions going on. But I want to make sure I mention this first. Listen, we have, John, you watched this video, Experience Israel's with Erez Hasson. So we're going to start publishing these on YouTube. On the Hope for Our Times, go there. I think you're really gonna like these Experience Israel's videos we do. The next one's gonna be in Nazareth. We're gonna have food, John. We're gonna have food at this one at Tishreen 2, which is up on a hill in Nazareth. Place is fantastic, and we're gonna have great conversation too.
Falafel is not food, though.
No, they don't have falafel at this place.
Okay.
And so, no, this place is, you'll see the video, but it's called Experience Israel, everybody. Go there and check it out, like and share it, because that's the only way it's gonna get out there. Also, I'm gonna get back to this, but John, you're in the description, but verbally, how can people follow you?
Fellowship Bible Chapel, fbchapel.com, Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, Rumble, Real FBC. And then some of my stuff is also put up on RT and TV. And then Fellowship Bible Chapel has its own app. And we're trying to roll out audio only stuff, but we're a very small church, like 70, 80 people. Yeah. So we're all volunteers. So it takes a while to get things done.
You know what? It does. Most people don't know how much it really is to just pull off anything, especially a live program, but just trying to, I mean, we've been working at this for years, and it costs a lot of money. It's a lot of volunteer help. And then I have a couple of young guys, my son and another guy in the studio with me. And it's a lot of work, everybody. Yeah. So anyways, enough of that. All right. So something.
You want to do Mississippi River real quick?
Okay, Mississippi River real quick.
The United States is blessed with a big river system, navigable rivers from our breadbasket heartland all the way to the ocean. Water transportation is 1/10 the cost of any other kind of transportation. It is why the United States, in large part, is a world power. And I was with Bill Caney down on the Ohio River 2 months ago at a friend's house across from Cincinnati, and the river was up. It was running like I've never seen it run before. And now, in parts of the Mississippi River system, they can't move the barges with that. And that's going to affect all kinds of goods, supply chains. I just read that we have 25-day supply of diesel fuel in the United States, which is the lowest it's ever been.
Wow. So
we're on the cusp of, I'm just telling you I always said we'll go in 2021. What day will it be that we say, oh, let's go back to the good old days of 2020? Then in 2021, 2022, I said that. And now we're going to say, like, I wish I could go back to July of 2022 when things were so good.
Yeah. Batten down the hatches is the name of our program today. Yeah. But I saw the diesel info, watching these things going on with the Mississippi River. But I got to throw one more thing out before we get back to the Iran thing. Obviously, we're going over. But I noticed a lot of people on the app are talking about Athey Creek and Brett Metter. Hey, you guys, if you want me to ask Brett Metter to come on the program sometime, let me know, and I'll fire him off a request. I would love to have Brett Metter on. Okay, so thank y'all for that. Okay, John, let's talk about this. Russia and Iran, a possible war, because it looks, I don't know, United States is pouring so much money into that. Petraeus is basically saying, hey, whatever it takes to eliminate Russia, assassinate Putin. You look at this, yet you look at Ezekiel 38, Russia's a player in the end.
Well, I think whether Putin is involved or not is maybe irrelevant, because Putin has sort of, over the years, he has purged his leadership so that he only has ideologues like himself in the plan of succession, so that even if Putin goes away, I don't see a change in Russia. It's sort of like what happens with Khomeini. You know, they used to have whoever the guy was before Raisi was the president. Now they have Raisi, known as the Butcher of Tehran. So they've upped the ante of the guy who's going to be brutal, come in and be as brutal as Khomeini. And so I think the succession plan, I don't see a big change there. Although, you know, there's essentially a revolution going on in Iran right now. But it's when those countries are in demographic decline, when they're being attacked, that they reach out to do stuff elsewhere. So I just see the potential for a big war someplace particularly in the Middle East. But, you know, you have North Korea that's also making sort of rearing its head all the time too. I just think there's a war like a World War III before in Ezekiel 38, 39 war. But I don't think it'll change the basic structure of Ezekiel 38, 39 that much, but it may change the world. It may, imagine a world war now with the financial crisis, the fuel crisis, and people wanting to reset the world economy with central bank digital currencies.
Okay.
That's a very interesting scenario.
I got one more question for you then. Maybe two, maybe three or four. All right.
You go till you're done.
We're you know, I know you're a couple hours ahead, so you got to go eat dinner. But
it's half price burger night too.
Oh, that's right. I got to remember that. Okay, so central bank digital currencies, on that, things are going that way. We know they are. They've got to go to they've got to get the CBDCs. We know that. But it appears to me right now you have different nations that are trying to get theirs. So to get it centralized the way the Bible describes, that's not going to happen in 2023, I don't see.
I think it'll be piecemeal, and I think that it will eventually then be coalesced into one. I think it'll be decentralized, and then it will be centralized at some point. But understand too, Tom, nothing has a long shelf life now in Bible prophecy. You know, we used to talk about this thing. I was at your church 5 years ago, and we were talking about things, and it was all kind of like theoretical at the time. Now it's like in the real world. And so if we think that these things need many, many years or decades to roll out, I think we're past that point now. They can happen very, very quickly. And that's part of the acceleration and convergence that we talk about.
Great. John, it was great having you on today. I have a lot more to ask, but I'm going to hit you up from Israel. I'm going to listen, if you have anything you want me to take pictures of, video of, when I'm in the area of the Karish gas field up there in the north, let me know. And
get some pictures of the boys.
I will send, I'll tell you what, Monkey's going to be with me. I'll probably do a short from there so I can get it posted right away.
We'll have Monkey swim out to the first buoy and kind of hang on and do a picture in a way.
I tell you what, everybody, I will get pictures of the buoy that John is talking about. That buoy that he's talking about marks the border of Lebanon and Israel, and it's what all the issue is about. And we have Lapid saying, let's just give all the gas away. And now this lady that we talked about today.
From Moritz.
Yeah. Okay.
She's crazy.
Send me anybody you want me to interview, anything you got going on while I'm there, you let me know. And
God bless.
God bless you too. Look forward to talking to you as soon as possible. Thanks, John. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Tom.